When I was growing up in Netherlands, I did attend some religious sessions. I didn't find anybody was ever able to explain things properly to me or in a way that made sense to me or that would draw me towards it. Many European countries, I could definitely see there's a huge interest in spirituality, not from the angle of organized religion. A couple of times it happens that my mom would be in some social interaction, and if she's the only foreigner, then naturally people gravitate towards her accent, both in positive and in negative. So once she told one lady off by saying that I may speak with an accent, but I don't think with an accent. When people are being interviewed abroad, let's say it's a Russian speaking or Arabic speaking person, they will be speaking their own language, but how are they dubbed? With an accent. Coming back to my mom's example of, speaking with an accent but not thinking with an accent, it makes people look less intelligent than what they are. When people ask me, should I do or what's the purpose of inner engineering? My short answer is to have a 360-degree review of your life. That's it, because it turns you upside down, inside out, and then whatever is left, that's probably worthwhile. Exactly this morning, for the first time, a volunteer in a class that I taught said something that I've never heard anybody say. He said, the sun is the ultimate volunteer because he shows up every day on time and in full glory.
Namaskaram everyone, this is Neha and welcome to another interesting episode of Simplified Talks with Neha. Our guest today is someone who's helping countless individuals towards their journey of physical and mental well-being with his extensive experience and profound understanding of Hatha Yoga. And today we have the privilege of delving into his remarkable life journey. So whether you're a seasoned yogi or just a beginner, you are in for a treat. Please welcome Francesco Anna. Namaskaram Anna.
Namaskaram.
How are you?
All good, thank you very much. That's quite the introduction.
Yeah. Thank you.
Experience, definitely yes. Understanding Hatha Yoga, not at all. Just a bare minimum to become a teacher, or I would like to say instructor. Yeah, teacher is a big word. Yeah, I am somebody who knows the instructions and has some experience of the practices and how to transmit to other people.
Okay, so let's talk about your early life first.
Yeah.
We want to know about your childhood and how was your journey before you joined Isha.
I had a pretty happy-go-lucky childhood. Nothing too remarkable other than the fact that when I was 2 years old, my parents shifted from Italy to Netherlands. So I grew up with one kind of language and culture at home and at school and anywhere outside my own house, another culture and language. They're not exactly totally different, like let's say somebody from India goes to US or a Chinese person maybe going to Europe. It's not that drastically different, but different enough. So noticing these differences, of course as a small kid I didn't have the vocabulary to articulate the differences, but my mom told me later that I would be really frustrated. I would come home crying from school because people would make fun of me because I didn't know the name of certain fruits or vegetables. Basic day-to-day stuff that you're supposed to know even when you're a toddler. Then I think in 2-3 years I managed to pick up properly to the level that I could be on par with my classmates. So from then onwards there was no struggle or strive anymore. But definitely later on as a teenager also it made me curious about other people, like why is this particular expression being used and why in Italian we say like this, but for the same meaning, to convey the same meaning in Dutch I have to say it in a totally different way. Or you have an expression that works in one language and it doesn't work at all in another language.
Yeah.
So then you start asking yourself a lot of basic questions like, okay, so what is right and wrong? How am I supposed to behave? How am I supposed to be? Whereas if you, at least what I observe in most people who grow up with one language predominantly or in one cultural model, it's either my way or the highway. Not necessarily in an arrogant point of view or demeanor, but it's just a default programming. In a way it's good also because a culture needs to be strong to survive the onslaught of whatever then happens in your life. So I did all my schooling in Dutch language till my teenage years. Then when I joined university is when I started studying in English. That was a big shift for me. I was doing English and French in school as a subject, and so I was quite comfortable with both. French would have been a step too far maybe to do schooling in French at that time, but English was fairly easy, and I was thinking of maybe doing something that has to do with other countries as well. That curiosity was there. And anyway, when you grow up in Netherlands, TV is in original language, so everything is subtitled. So even if you're not studying English, by default you're absorbing a lot. And then I came across this student committee, and I was so excited. Wow, I can be in a student committee for foreign students. So I immediately wanted to sign up. So there I got into a role of organizing cultural activities, parties, excursions, and that just skyrocketed my languages, and there my interest to go abroad and study abroad and travel came. Which is then what led me to do a master's program abroad. I was in Austria for 1 year for a master's program, and during my bachelor's program itself, I went half a year to Russia, to St. Petersburg. That was the first, let's say, hardcore being alone in the, maybe some of the viewers might know Stranger in Moscow, the song by Michael Jackson, while I was stranger in St. Petersburg. It was so damn cold, I couldn't believe what was happening to me. I remember distinctly a couple of nights that I was coming home from outings with friends. The metro wasn't running anymore. It was so cold and so snowy and windy. I can't remember like the last few hundred meters reaching home. I just remember waking up in my bed. But I remember 2 or 3 times I thought I'm not gonna make it. Just walking home. Because Netherlands is a cold country, but it's not at all comparable to Russia. So that was quite formative. And my roommate spoke only Russian, and he was like 18-year-old kid. I was 21 at the time. This guy was playing computer games all through the night, keeping me up, and I need to study the next day. So I had to quickly develop my Russian skills, which was helpful. So I could scold him to, stop playing the computer and leave me the hell alone. I want to sleep. One day also invited a friend over in the night. So I come home, I want to sleep, and some guy is in my bed. So I just gave him left and right. I wanted to go for a career in United Nations or as a diplomat. That was my great thing. But with my first job experience, I got hugely dejected. I was working in United Nations in a peacekeeping mission in Côte d'Ivoire, which is in West Africa. In English, it's called Ivory Coast, but the actual name of the country is Côte d'Ivoire, even in English. The way that a UN peacekeeping mission world works was not at all what I expected. So I was super dejected. But I guess it's part of, little heartbreak when you venture into the world of work, that not everything works to the way you thought it was. And the typical disconnect between education and actual working life. Yeah, I was in a relationship at that time that crashed and burned. And that's when I suddenly, interest for yoga awoke. What a surprise. I was around 23 when I heard for the first time in a lecture about yoga and meditation. I may have read the words, but never paid attention to it. But here, one of my fellow master candidates in Austria, he was speaking about, he's from the US, and he had done comparative religious studies. So he talked about Zen Buddhism and about different philosophies of life. And I thought, quite interesting, but it wasn't my cup of tea at the time. And he sent us an email with some references. A voice inside me told me, you might want to hang on to that email, though you're not interested right now. So I listened to my intuition. This is one of the first times that I can clearly remember in my 20s that I had a very strong intuitive urge for something that was not coming from my sense of logic. Then in 2009, when I was 1 year into the UN experience and that relationship crashed, and along with that I myself crashed and shattered in 1,000 pieces, then I thought, okay, what about that email, huh? So I opened my computer. Thank God I kept it. Because it was like a lifeline, seriously. Later I thanked him hundreds of times, but I don't know I ever could convey properly my gratitude towards him. And if he's watching this podcast, Nathan Mitchen, you know who you are. I'm super, super grateful. Whatever book reference he gave, I bought it. Whatever websites for further reading or where they taught some simple meditations or asanas, I just explored. So I went on in that mode for 2 years, between 2009 2010, and then fast forward, I went back to Europe, picked up a job in Netherlands. I was working for Shell, the oil company, another international role. So again, exposure to people from all over the world, and interesting because I'd never worked in business before. So this was a totally different thing. I just wanted to try. I thought I don't want to become one of those typical political junkies or peace hippies who always says companies are this, corporates are evil, blah, blah, blah. I thought I don't want to fall into that kind of logic. It doesn't make any sense. Let me see with my own eyes and see. Yeah, believe it or not, I found most people working in Shell to be much more politically and culturally sensitive and aware than people in United Nations, which was like, it just scrambled my brain. So yeah, I was working in the HQ in The Hague of Shell, and yeah, living quite a comfy, cushiony life, very good salary. But the actual role I was doing, I didn't like it. Then I took the nice earnings, thank you Shell, the nice salary that I was given. I had a lot of free time. And I thought, I always had this childhood dream, ever since maybe I was 7 or 8, that I want to learn Arabic.
Okay.
The only reason I studied Russian in university and ended up going to Russia for my 6 months abroad, which is known as the Erasmus program in Europe, is because there was no Arabic being offered in my college. They offered to send me to Morocco, I think it was, to university, but I said if I don't study the language in advance, it'll be very difficult for me. Plus, in Arabic, the studied language, the spoken language is not the same as the language which is taught in schools and universities. So I thought that disconnect itself might be already too much of a bridge, a bridge too far for me. I went to Lebanon, out of all the Arabic-speaking countries. One is because at that time it was one of the calmest, least political turmoil that was going on. This is end of 2010. So those of you watching the podcast now, I don't know in which year you're watching, but mostly Lebanon is one of the places where most of the time things are really going totally out of hand, really unfortunately, because it's an amazing country with really amazing people, and as an Italian, you will feel so at home, or anyone who lives in the Mediterranean area, people from Greece, Turkey, Italy, southern parts of France and Spain or Portugal. I'm sure if you end up in Lebanon, it's just like being at home, except people speak Arabic. You have wonderful food, wonderful people, and a very outdoor, family-oriented, fun-loving culture. You have mountains and seaside within 1 or 2 hours, from each other. So I wanted to study Arabic, and I decided to enroll for a basic which is known as Levantine Arabic, which is the Arabic of Syria, Lebanon, and Iraq. That area can be roughly categorized as one style or one dialect of Arabic. So I thought, let's start there for 3 months and see what happens. I thought maybe I'll go to Egypt to learn their dialect. But just the Levantine or Lebanese Arabic was hard enough that I never ventured out of Lebanon after that. And in the language school, there was a big poster of inner engineering. This is the end of 2010. So I was like, inner engineering, what is this? And yeah, so this has been about 2 years that my spiritual soul digging was going on. And all these things I found, many of them were very interesting. The books, the references, the asanas that I've learned. But somehow I couldn't hang on to anything. But when I did inner engineering, I stuck to it, like a dog at the airport security, who sniffs something and is like, we're gonna catch this guy for drug possession or something. That focused and a sense of discipline which I had never known in my life. It's not that I was totally undisciplined. I'd like to think I have both an Italian side, which is a bit free-flowing, spontaneous, improvising kind of crazy side, and a more disciplined, organized, Teutonic Dutch side. So I had both elements always, but now I suddenly became a super disciplinarian, but in a relaxed way because I enjoyed it and I saw what it was doing to me. After that, I stuck to practices from SADHGURU and Isha Foundation, and yeah, just took it all the way.
I want to know what kind of spirituality is being followed in Italian and Dutch culture.
Right, at that time, I think by and large, it was the typical convenants of Christian faith. So in Italy, it's more Roman Catholic, so the more opulent and wealth-showing churches and rituals. Whereas in Netherlands, it's more of a Protestant slash Calvinistic, and in that there are many smaller factions or denominations, which is generally more stripped to basics, not too much lavish, kind of portrayal of religion. But most of the tenets, the religious tenets, are the same. When I was growing up in Netherlands, I did attend some, let's say, religious sessions. Like my parents had put me in some I wouldn't know the name in English, but let's say a kind of trajectory which is supposed to help you develop your faith a little bit further. So I was going to these sessions, but I didn't find much satisfaction. I must say I also didn't read scriptures myself at the time, or if I did, it was very casual. But whatever little bit I could grasp, I didn't find anybody was ever able to explain things properly to me or in a way that made sense to me or that would draw me towards it. It was all mostly all quite mechanical. It didn't inspire me, to become a better version of myself, or it didn't inspire me to greatness, or it didn't inspire me much towards, I'm gonna become, a more ardent follower or a religious person. In fact, I grew quite dejected, and I kind of felt like I should just try and explore on my own. But then when university came around, I got distracted and just partying and running after girls and studying in between. I don't know how the hell I managed, but somehow it worked. And I got good grades also, which I didn't get in high school. But that longing was there, and it got rekindled later, much later, with that breakup when I was about 25. But nowadays, if you look at many European countries, I could definitely see there's a huge interest in spirituality, not from the angle of organized religion. Actually, there is a subset of people in Christianity that follow meditation, meditative practices, and but they're completely pushed to the side, to the point that many people, including myself, didn't know about it at the time. But now it's mostly people are generally following Eastern traditions. Those who are spiritually inclined. They'll look at Hinduism, Buddhism, many people. Maybe they won't affiliate officially, but they will look into these philosophies in terms of drawing a meaning from life which they're not finding from their own culture or their own scriptures. So that is a big shift that is happening. I think it's a quite natural consequence with the kind of moral and spiritual bankruptcy that's happening in Western countries, including Europe, since a couple of decades. Yeah, so people are just looking to fill that gap, and I'm definitely not against if people look into Eastern traditions, because that's what the East is most famous for, and one of the best things coming from the East.
So coming from an Italian cultural background, staying in Dutch culture, was it difficult for you and your family? Did you face some challenges?
Mostly it was relatively smooth, I would say, especially if I compare my experience with the experience of many other migrants around the world. Because at the end, my father got a job offer that he liked more than what he had in Italy. But otherwise, he had things going for him in Italy also. Maybe he didn't see the future as bright as it would have been in Netherlands. So then my parents took this leap of faith, with me being 2 years old and my brother was just born at the time. My parents definitely struggled a bit more to pick up the language, and my father being in an international organization, they were mostly speaking in English. There was less incentive for him, whereas my mom was more plugged into the Dutch culture, also because of taking my brother and I to sports and cultural events and other things, so she would naturally have to interact more. Both of them actually speak quite well Dutch, and they still like to use it, though they've retired and gone back to Italy now. But they keep visiting Netherlands also, because my brother lives there with his wife and daughter. So a couple of times it happens that my mom would be in some social interaction, and if she's the only foreigner, then naturally people gravitate towards her accent, both in positive and in negative. So sometimes there would be a little bit of mockery, maybe not outright racism, but definitely some kind of mockery. So once she told one lady off by saying that I may speak with an accent, but I don't think with an accent. Even at that time, I was a kid when she told me. I was like, oh wow, that's a cool sentence. But then later, as in my 20s and 30s, learning other languages, that phrase came up often with me when I felt a bit dejected by how people sometimes treat me in a language learning process. But it's peanuts in the grand scheme of things. The satisfaction you get once you are at a certain level where you are, you can confidently speak with others even if you make mistakes, and the kind of privileges it brings you and opportunities it opens up, and the connection with people. It's small, but still, most people, they will crash and burn in that phase because they can't take the rejection that comes at the beginning, because you put in so many hours, so much time and sweat. And then, people with a small remark they just crush your ego. One of many things that I could say about languages, because I'm a huge language aficionado, and till this date, today's day of recording, I just turned 39, so this might be different in the future, but till this date of this recording, I still have never encountered a person who speaks more languages than me. I know they're out there on the YouTube. I see their videos and I'm really in awe at them, and I really try to propel myself forward to the next language by looking at them and just being in awe of their language talent. Currently, I speak, read, and write 9 languages, and then a few not so well, including the Indian languages, which I need to work on. It's been 10 years now here, so I have to put a bit more effort. It's really not good. But one of the amazing things about languages is people are focused on the end result, but they don't really look at the process in terms of the benefit it can give you. Not just because it helps you to organize and structure and develop your mind. The other aspect is the sheer rejuvenation of your whole brain. You're helping the rejuvenation process and the activity of the neurons, because learning a language is one of the hardest things for the brain, because it literally has to rewrite a lot of components or sections of the brain. It's almost giving you an additional layer or personality of looking at or lens of looking at the world, which is psychologically also a little challenging to handle that. And so this kind of makes me think of my grandma also. Why? Because it's supposed to be one of the language learning is supposed to be one of the best anti-aging things, along with dancing and another thing which I can't remember. So my grandma is, as of today, she is 88, and she's been doing the exact same English class, same level, since 39 years, I believe. This is like a seniors university where you can enroll for free, and the lecturers are like proper professionals from that area, but usually they don't charge. It's activity for anyone 50 plus from the town. They can just join and learn things. If somebody hears that, person A doing the same language class for 39 years, they might think like, "Arey, what is this same thing all the time? Won't you get bored after some time with doing that?" But the beautiful thing is, and which is what I also initially thought, but then if I see my grandmother, the level of activity she has, and people who are in their 60s and 70s, they can't keep up with her physical pace. Also, though she's tiny, her legs move very fast. And she has such an energy and a vibe and a zest for life. And I'm sure that she putting herself through that grind of going through that class over and over again is somehow part of the secret sauce that keeps her so well, even at such an advanced age. This is my mom's mother, but for example, my dad's father, he when he passed, Alzheimer's was one of the main complications that he had at the time. So it's very unfortunate. In the same family, you see two ends of the spectrum in terms of the neurological health and what situations it can precipitate the person. Neurological issues, I think, are growing over time, as are many chronic situations. And instead of only resorting to popping pills or going through expensive treatments, and in a way giving it out of your hands, why not also look at some solutions which you yourself can, take charge of your situation. Then if you still need outside support, you can always opt for it if you wish. That's another main reason that I fell in love so much with yoga, because on one level it's an amazing self-help tool for physical and mental health and resilience, and not to just sign your health away. And because most people, at least in my eyes, or by the way they speak, it's like, I just live with whichever way I want. When something breaks, I'll just go and get it fixed. I just cannot comprehend that kind of notion. Or I'll just work Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. I hate my job. And then 2 days of Saturday, Sunday, I just kill myself drinking and partying. And then repeat that cycle over and over again. So, and now we're seeing, I think, the result of it, which is ever younger people. For example, as a yoga teacher, that is the lens also in which I view the world. Younger and younger people coming with problems that you're only supposed to have 10 or 20 or 30 years later. Both mental and physical problems. I think in part this is definitely due to that kind of TGIF, thank God it's Friday kind of lifestyle, because it's definitely not sustainable, not for everyone. So I soon realized that's not for me. So that's why I quickly ran out of the office kind of environment and the structured and fixed working hours, because I thought this is gonna kill my soul.
So you said you have a grip over 9 languages. Did you find it difficult to learn those languages? Were there some challenges?
Yes and no. So being Italian, French and Spanish, and to some extent Portuguese, is relatively easy. Being also a native speaker of Dutch, I mean, since 2 years old, so almost native. Picking up German was fairly easy, though I never studied German, but I lived in both in Austria and in Switzerland for a year each. So with that, I kind of compensated for the lack of formal education. And in fact, many Germans cannot understand Swiss German, so I'm one step ahead of them. Russian and Arabic were the hardest languages for me, by far. In fact, Russian I dropped out initially because I was the first non-Western European language I studied. After the initial dejection and pulling out of the class because I had so many things going on and this committee for the foreign students, so I was so busy. But then I was like, come on, don't give up so easily, Don't be such a fool to drop this language. So somewhere I think in the winter break, so this is maybe 3-4 months into my first semester, I picked up the Russian books and I taught myself the whole alphabet and the first few lessons. I just asked the teacher for permission to get back if I was able to come on par with the class material. She agreed. Thank God she agreed. Yeah, it was quite something, very tough. But with Arabic, it was like a new compartment of the brain being formed. Luckily, I had a bit of help from the days of the student committee. So here I'm 19, 20 and 21 years old. So at the time I knew Italian, Dutch, English and French. And I started working on Spanish and Russian, and also at the same time switching between all these languages on a daily basis. That too, people who speak the same language but from different countries. So the Spanish from Mexico and Spain is very different. The French from Belgium, France, Canada, very different. The English from Scotland, Ireland, Australia, very different. So my brain was just going into a tizzy. I was having continuous headaches for the first at least 3 months that I was part of that committee. Then somehow my brain figured out a strategy to switch languages without exhausting itself. And probably some adaptation happened in the brain. And ever since, it's not been an issue for me. Yeah. When I learn a new language, I struggle with my weakest language. That's a standard thing that has happened ever since. Other than that, for example, right now, if you ask me to speak in Arabic, I will say mostly Hindi words because they're the 2 closest languages in my head. So my brain it'll take my brain 5 to 10 minutes to kind of create a barrier between the two and start speaking fully in Arabic. Okay. In between, a lot of Hindi and Urdu words will come. One amazing thing about Arabic, writing right to left. I'm a lefty, so I can see what I write.
Okay.
It's such a blessing. But for example, Arabic is the only language that I have studied where the verb changes also at the beginning, not at the end of the word. Most languages, you have a root, and when you use the verb for you or for others, you keep changing the last bit, the suffix.
Yeah.
But here you're also changing the prefix. So good luck recognizing what kind of verb it is, which verb. I just couldn't believe my misfortune.
What is that one surprising thing about the languages that people are not aware of?
One thing that strikes me, and it's particularly painful as somebody who follows politics quite closely and somebody who has, I've invested my heart and soul in these countries and the people speaking these languages, in particular Russian and Arabic. Again, coming back to these two. Why? Because in most of the Western cultural content, especially movies and specifically Hollywood, anytime there is a bad guy, he is always either Russian speaking or Arabic speaking. They almost never depict anyone speaking Russian or Arabic who is normal. They always have some. The Russian always wants to destroy the world, and the Arabic speaking person always wants to blow himself up. These are the 2 spectrums in which different levels of bad guys, that's how they're depicted. And when I was a teenager, it was all, ha ha, he, it's okay, whatever, it's just a movie. But when you study a language and when you start looking at, after interacting with people from Arabic speaking countries and Russia and other Russian speaking peoples, you realize the kind of disservice it's doing to people, because it kind of makes it also very easy to legitimize certain, if you take the angle of politics, legitimizing certain treatment in the media of certain people. And a very specific example I'd like to give is when people are being interviewed abroad, let's say it's a Russian speaking or Arabic speaking person. The interviewer might have an interpreter there, or the interviewer knows that language and asks. But when the answer comes back from the person being interviewed, it will be dubbed. They will be speaking their own language, but how are they dubbed? With an accent.
Oh.
And this really, really annoys me. Yeah? It really bothers the hell out of me. Coming back to my mom's example of, speaking with an accent but not thinking with an accent.
Yeah.
It makes people look less intelligent than what they are. So it's again a way of legitimizing treating certain people as, B-level humans or inferior, somehow inferior. And this is very, very dangerous narrative.
Is this stereotype true that Northern European are much more reserved than Southern European or Mediterranean people?
Yes, I would definitely say this is one stereotype which is 100% true. So one of the main factors is the climate. Not from today to tomorrow, but over a long period of time, it kind of shapes the culture also. So in that, one very simple element would be that the minute you get out of your house and you have to go somewhere, if it's cold or rainy or windy, let's say it's unpleasant for most people. Some people are immune to the weather condition and they go about their activity or day same way, bless them, for they are few. For most people, if they have to go from A to B and it's unpleasant outside, even if they see a friend or a relative on the street, they'll just try to quickly, get down to business or exchange whatever is needed, or altogether ignore and just go and then maybe later call that person. Okay. It's also possible. Whereas in a warmer country, or where you have more days of sunlight per year, definitely most of the time people will be outside. I mean, the typical Italian or Spanish or Greek scenario in many Mediterranean countries, where people are always on the main square next to a fountain, eating gelato, ice cream, or just walking around. It's actually really true, especially in Italy.
Now let's talk about your inner engineering experience.
Sure.
How did it all start and what was your experience and how it went ahead?
So after seeing that poster in my Arabic language school, I immediately called the inquiry number, and I was greeted by this amazing voice. And Eli, if you're listening, shout out to you. He was the country manager at the time of Isha, Lebanon, and he was handling the registrations. Such a caring and tender person behind the voice. It really touched me. I was like, why is he being so nice? I mean, I didn't suspect anything, but I was just like, wow. Maybe the appropriate reaction was, wow, he's really that nice. Then I met him also, and he just briefly talked to me about the program, and I just decided to sign up. Yeah, it was full of people my age, many people in their 20s, and because of its turbulent past, I'm not surprised that Lebanon has been and still is one of the hubs of spiritual process in the Middle East, and especially for Isha Foundation. So many programs have been running there already for more than a decade. This was a 7-day format with in-person classes. It was a very mixed bag for me, the 7 days. On the one hand, I was so thrilled by the content, the things that SADHGURU was saying in the videos and what the teacher was explaining to us. It was really mind-blowing. Like, some of these concepts had taken me like all those 27 years to figure out, and then many new ones were introduced that I'd never thought about or heard about. And then the way that SADHGURU and the teacher string them all together into one outlook or one vision of the world and life, without being dogmatic, not telling you how to live. So when people ask me, should I do, or what's the purpose of inner engineering? My short answer is to have a 360-degree review of your life. That's it, because it turns you upside down, inside out, and then whatever is left, that's probably worthwhile. And it's that, shift, such a shift can happen with that. sitting in that class really, really gave me such, gold nuggets and diamonds and other precious stones. At the same time, at the other end of the spectrum, I was really suffering the kind of some of the cultural elements which I was not used to. Let's say there was some talk about wearing certain bracelets or threads, also around the neck, or the use of this sacred ash, which is known as vibhuti, and other things. And then at the time there was a photo of Sadhguru where his head is a bit like this, which kind of reminded me of Jesus on the cross. So it kind of spooked me a bit. Those elements spooked me, to be honest, because I had not much cultural affinity with India. But somehow I pulled through, and one of the main reasons is because every time I came out of the class, all the shoes were properly organized. I know I came a little on the late side a few times. I just threw my shoes and I ran into the class. But I come out nicely organized. So I told myself there are only two possibilities. Either these volunteers are barking mad, or they have experienced and seen something that is really, really worthwhile. Otherwise, they have their job, they have their family, they must have some hobbies also. So surely they have better things to do than come and sit with fools like me who are going like, half-heartedly through the program. Though they're impressed, but also at the other end a bit, it's like a magnet, push and pull kind of thing. Once the program got completed and I started the practice with the required frequency, it just blew not just my mind, like every fiber of my being. And then I really stuck to it like a super glue, and I didn't look back to any other practices. Not because there's no other valid form of yoga out there, simply because, and I've seen now later with experience, it takes people sometimes decades to find one single form of yoga or meditation that works for them. People go on for decades to look, and often paired with a lot of anxiety and fear that will they ever find. I've had many such conversations with people. So for me to just stumble upon it 2 years into my yoga meditation journey, that's not a small fortune. 3 main things that happened in those first few weeks of inner engineering, doing the practice of Shambhavi Mahamudra. One is, I found many more layers to my joy. Let's say, let's put a number of 10 to a feeling of joy. I was always like 8 or 9 with peaks of 10, because I was always in these 10 years of roaming around. I was, learning languages or improving them, but especially living in those countries and working there or studying there. So that was such a raw experience of life, and it taught me so many things. And at the same time, I was able to be calm and collected and fully engaged in the process. Maybe if first happiness or joy was 10, now I discovered it's maybe 30 or 40. So whatever I think is joy or happiness, it can be double or triple that. So then I started, just in my day-to-day, or during the practices occasionally, I started feeling some sensations of joy which were so profound, and it just really scrambled my mind. And tying into that is the second big change, which was, for the first time in my life, I didn't need any external stimulus to be happy. Because usually I would find my excitement and my joy by hanging out with my friends, or pushing myself into a new language, or trying a new food, or going to that particular restaurant or that particular scenic spot. But now I'm just cooking or doing some very mundane chore in the house, or I'm going somewhere and I just get a burst of happiness, or I simply feel the same way I feel as when I'm with my friends or eating that amazing dish. So then I was like, wait a minute, so I can do things with external stimuli to feel good, but I can also have no external stimuli and still feel good. That was the revolution for me, totally revolutionary. And the third aspect maybe is that I felt very much in tune with nature, in a way I've never felt it before. Prior to that experience, in 2009 I had become vegetarian for my own reasons, mostly due to environment and animal cruelty. So this predates my yoga journey in a way. So then when I did the inner engineering, suddenly what I found is that not just the way I looked at animals, but especially trees, the feeling of wind and rain, or the sunrise and sunset, which I always like rubbished. It's like, yeah, whatever. It's just sun coming up, okay, what's the big deal? Sun going down, okay, what's the big deal? Ever since, till this day, and I think it will go on for the rest of my days, any sunrise or sunset I see, I'm intoxicated. I could just stare at it. Of course, with sunrise, at some point your eyes will start burning, but just that scene that comes, for free and so easily. Exactly this morning, for the first time, a volunteer in a class that I taught said something that I've never heard anybody say. He said, the sun is the ultimate volunteer because he shows up every day on time and in full glory. So when I heard it, I was like, whoa, this is a
So
gold
true.
mine.
Yeah.
So when I was feeling wind or rain on my skin, it was almost as if, the creator or God or the source energy or whatever people want to call it, as if she or it was touching me. And I'm somebody, as I mentioned to you also prior to this recording, that I don't have much experience during my practices. I don't really feel anything. People talk to me about a blue light, or I felt this chakra opening, or I tingling in my spine. I have those experiences like less than once in a year, maybe. So for me, practice is like a desert. It's nothing. It's a barren landscape. However, the impact of the practices, so the rest of my day, is where I see all the change, and that's all I need. I don't need anything else. If and when an experience happens, well and good. If it doesn't happen, fantastic, not an issue. But now just these mundane things, the wind and the rain, and I just felt everything is natural. So one thing I immediately did that time in Lebanon, I stopped plugging my ears with my music player, and I just wanted to listen to the sounds, even if it was the cacophony of honking two-wheelers and cars. So those three are the main changes. Oh, and one more small parenthesis. For the first time in my life, I started working as a freelancer in that time in my life. The kind of stress, especially in terms of earnings, compared to having a fixed salary at the end of the month, was so different and so huge for me that I couldn't have thought of any other way to pull through that to being in a foreign country if it were not for these practices. Impossible.